Hello and welcome to this webinar today on March 8th, the International Women's Day. And today we would like to talk about finally breaking the glass ceiling, women's careers in 21st century organizations. My name is Jos Sieveke, and today I would like to discuss this very important topic on this very important day, which now marks the 100th anniversary of the International Women's Day. And I will later on welcome three panelists who will together with me discuss this important topic about women's careers in 21st century organizations. Before I will introduce my panelists, I would like to first start with some more information about the topic of women and especially women careers in 21st century organizations. So what I'd like to do is I will now share my screen, and so this is the motto of this year's International Women's Day, Choose the Challenge, or IDW 2021. And before I will now talk a little bit more about the, let's call it, career gap for women in 21st century organizations, I would like to start with a very short quiz. So what I like to do, our audience, what I like to do is go to either menti.com and use these numbers here, or use maybe your smartphone and scan this QR code. And then let's do a short quiz, just 3 questions about the current state of women's and especially the question about differences between men and women with regard to education and career. So let me see whether people have already started. Let me see, we have already 13 participants, so I wait just a few seconds more. So either use menti.com and add these numbers here, or use the QR code 15. Okay, I will now stop 17. All right, that's already. I will now stop sharing this screen and go to Menti. All right, let's start. The first question is, how big is the pay gap between men and women in the Netherlands? Is it 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%, or is it 25%? We have 10 seconds left to make your final decision. 5, 10, 15, 20, or 25%. And the gap is indeed 15%, what most of the participants knew. Great. All right, let's see. Let's see about the second question, which is, how big is the education gap in Europe? 6% more men graduate from university than women. 11% more men graduate from university than women. Or is it 6% more women than men that graduate from university? Or is it even 11% more women than men who graduate from university? Let's see whether the majority of our participants know this. Time is up, and the correct answer is indeed 11% more women graduate from university than men. Okay, good. And now the last question. Let's see whether you know this. And the third question is, among the largest companies in the Netherlands, what is the percentage of women among senior executives? Is it 13%, 21%, 28%, or 35%? What do you think? Largest companies in the Netherlands, what's the percentage of women among senior executives? 13, 21, 28, or 35? And the correct answer is, indeed, it's 21%. So fortunately, this has increased in the last couple of years. So it's now 21% in the Netherlands, but still, and that's something we will discuss later on, 21% is of course not that much. All right, so let's see, is there anyone? Let me just stop sharing this screen here. And let me go back quickly to my presentation just for a few minutes. So what we just saw is there are still gaps between men and women, and especially there's this gender pay gap. We also heard about the educational gap, but interestingly, this educational gap is the other way around. So more women than men graduate from university, which now, of course, brings us to the question, why is there still, on the one hand, of course, the gender pay gap, but more interestingly, and that's something I would like to discuss today, why is there also this gap when we look at the C-level of organizations? And what you can see here on this slide is, again, the status quo in Europe, women as senior executives. And the Netherlands, finally in 2020, are slightly above the EU average for women among senior executives. But if I look, for instance, if you look at the yellow line, Germany, which is where I'm currently located, then we are talking about, let's say, something between 13 or 12% is the share of women among top managers in Germany. It looks a little bit better in the Scandinavian countries, so Norway, the red line, or Sweden, the blue line. But the question is, why, despite this educational gap, which we just discussed, why is there still this significant gap between men and women when we look at the C-levels of organizations in the Netherlands? And I would like to discuss this question today with my three guests. First, I would like to introduce Ingrid Reichmann. Ingrid Reichmann is managing partner and co-owner of the executive search company Partners at Work. One of the missions of this company is to promote female talent for senior positions in the financial and professional service industry. Her company has received the Executive Search Award from Talent Naar de Top, both in 2018 and in 2019. And Ingrid has, due to her multiple years of experience, in-depth insights into women's careers, and especially knows a lot about how women can make it also to the top within organizations. Ingrid, thank you very much for joining us today, and I would like to welcome you, and I'm very much looking forward to learn from you.
All right, thank you, Jost. It is a pleasure to be here. And yeah, when in preparation of this day, I was really going through all the information that you can find on this topic. I mean, it is really a topic that people are having investigated a lot. So I just thought, yeah, what can I tell you about this? So I thought to speak from my heart and from my experience. Like Jost already told you, my name is Ingrid. I work for executive search company Partners at Work. Indeed, my own profession or my own specialism is in the financial services industry. But with my group of fellow partners, we work throughout the whole area of different sectors in the Netherlands, within corporate and public and non-public sectors. Already 10 years ago, we promised that we signed an agreement with Stichting Talent naar de Top that we would present a long list of female candidates and male candidates. And that's what we do already since. And that also has actually resulted in the fact that we place at least 50% female of women in top positions. So talking about glass ceilings, in my job and in my daily work, we are constantly breaking indeed glass ceilings, because we are indeed are able to place women on a better position. Now, why I was wondering, why are we again discussing this topic here? Why can't we solve the problem of appointing women in top positions? Apparently there is a big issue. And I had this morning, it's Women's Day, we all know that, of course. I was listening to a breakfast of the Stichting Talent to the Top, and the theme was actually almost the same as 10 years ago. We are not really making progress. And on the other hand, female leadership, appreciation for female leaderships and feminine qualities have increased dramatically. So the time is right for us girls to move on. Now, we are just going to discuss this here, but I was also thinking of what is the message that I want to bring across. So I think my message to you guys will be, we need to set clear objectives, and we can use horse remedies. I find it an amazing word, horse remedies, but like quota. Quota are a difficult thing to discuss with male and female. Do you really need quota? I think, yes, we do. I think that we do need them, because men, the guys that we have to do it together with, really need clear objectives. You have to tell them, this is what the aim is, and this is how we get there. So quota, for me, perfect. I also believe that we need to inspire women with role models. That's also something I think that we should do a lot. Our new Vice President of the United States, Mrs. Harris, has already told us, now every little black girl in the US can see what you can accomplish. This is a great role model. We need them. We need to show them. So that is also what we try to do in our daily work. And to the women, I think it's a message that it takes a lot of hard work to get there. In the Netherlands, we have a tendency that part-time work is we are very familiar with that. The Netherlands finds it very normal that you work 3 days a week or 2 days a week. In fact, there has been a lot of research about this, and it's just, we are champion part-time work. If you want to reach the top, you cannot work part-time. It takes a lot of effort. Of course, you can share all kinds of things with your partner, but you don't have to be the only one who washes the dishes, but it has to take a lot of time and effort to get there. And that is also a message that I want to bring across. Now, I promised Jos that it will only take 3 minutes. I think I'm already over that. So this is basically my opening story to you.
Yeah, amazing. Good. Okay. Yeah, you see, I'm back. Yeah, these are the things that happen when we are still working from home. Okay, so I think I missed Ingrid, or is the entire discussion already over?
Perfect timing.
Okay, Ingrid, so okay, good. All right, from Ingrid, I would now like to hand over to Mirjam. Mirjam Ros is Director of Business Transformation at Airbus Defence and Space Netherlands. Before taking this position, Mirjam was Director Commercial Contracts and Legal, as well as Director Human Resources at Airbus. So she has also multiple years of industry experience and therefore has also the opportunity to provide us an expert perspective on women careers in this industry. Mirjam, thank you very much for joining our discussion here. And
Yeah, Jos, thank you very much. My name is Mirjam Ros.
Share my screen.
Yeah, Ingrid, also thank you very much for your interesting story. Fortunately, we did hear you, so I think there are also some nice links to connect to. What I would like to start with is to say, I think diversity is an easy business case, but sometimes it also seems like rocket science. What I would like to say with this is that I don't know people I work with who are against diversity. I think the people I work with are open to work with diverse people. And it's not only, of course, about gender, it's also about a culture, background, age, LGBT, etc. I think it's important to see it in a broader field. Yeah, I think the people I work with at Airbus Defence and Space Netherlands are very open to work in diverse teams. I think people are convinced that a diverse team have better results, better performance, and that it's super interesting to work to get more perspectives around the table. But at the same time, Ingrid, you also mentioned it about the breakfast this morning. Yeah, why is it going so slowly? I think it's a bit like rocket science. It's not that easy. It's not an easy tick in the box. I think there are some challenges in our industry, in the space and the aerospace industry and in the defense. What we see is that there are less women working in high tech in the industry and also already educated with a technical background. For example, aerospace engineering at the Technology University in Delft, 12% women. For example, the Leiden Instrumental School in Leiden, there's only 10% women. And yeah, there it starts already with a challenge. So I fully agree with what you said, Ingrid, that we need role models there. And that's also what we try to put the spotlights on them. I think a second challenge is the unconscious bias. There is a lot of things that we are not aware of if we see people with a different background, a different gender, etc. And a more awareness, I'm convinced that this will help. And also not then only to talk about the differences or to talk about when you're more aware, but especially doing things on your own square meter. I think that's most important, because talking and thinking, we can do that all, but it's about doing. And also the role models, what we see, especially for young girls, we think it's super important to show them, hey, technology is also for you. So we give education at primary schools for young girls and young boys, and we try to send also our female engineers to them to show what they are also capable of doing in the future. What we also do is to put the topic on the agenda, to increase the awareness, to discuss it with the leaders, with the women and with the men, because I think it's super important that we both work on it. And I would like to also to shortly underline to what's put on the visual on the slide. You see here Sparkwing. It's a new product. It's a smaller solar array for smaller satellites. And I'm really proud of this team. It's really a diverse team with different backgrounds, with men and women, also in age. And I think it really led to better results that it was such a diverse team. So that's also the reason I wanted to bring this slide today. So yeah, I think diversity, it is maybe an easy business case. And maybe I think after 10 years or 20 or 30 years, we know that. But it's still difficult. And it's a bit like rocket science. We have to work on the long term, put lots of effort in, and then you can work on launch and to lift off. The second slide I would like to show you is it's about Charlotte. Charlotte is one of our female test engineers. And I think she's really cool. She was in a movie for school TV and also for Nemo. And what I would like to say with this picture, aim for the moon, and of course you can do it. And what's I think clear for a lot of us is that men and women are different. And I would like to take one example is that in general, women are less risk-taking and maybe also a bit less confident about themselves. If you compare it in men and in general, of course. And maybe it's too simplistic. I also have sometimes discussions about this. And then I think, no, it's not about discussion, it's about doing. It's about supporting each other, embracing the differences, and working together and feeling represented. I think that's very important. Today, that's the theme of the International Women's Day. It's choose to challenge. I would like to challenge both women and men. Women, aim for the moon. Don't be too perfectionistic, just aim for the moon, you might hit the star. And maybe you fail, just try to do it. Also, if you're struggling or if you're not that self-confident, try to do it. Express what you want and what you need. And secondly, I would like to say also to the men, if you have somebody in your network or your daughter or a friend or a colleague, if somebody is struggling, if a woman is struggling and if she's less self-confident, it could help a lot if you would say, of course you can do it. And I think some of my managers and some people in my network said that to me in the past, and it really makes a difference. Because if people say, hey, you can do that, and afterwards you think, oh, I did it, it can build your confidence and it can help to next steps in your careers. So I would like to repeat, aim for the moon, you might hit a star, and of course you can do it.
Super. Thank you very, very much, Mirjam. Very great encouragement. Thanks. Last but not least, I would like to introduce my colleague, Christina Rott. Christina is an assistant professor at the Department of Management and Organization at Vrije Universiteit. Christina has in her research intensively studied how to increase career opportunities for minority members in organizations, and to answer her research questions, she has conducted multiple experiments in order to better understand how career chances can be improved. So her research has been published in some of the most renowned academic journals, and I would like to introduce thank you, Christina, for taking the time and share your insights with us. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Joost, and thank you for being part of this great panel with Mirjam and Ingrid, which have already brought so many great ideas to the floor, and so had already gave a very sound background on what issues are in the labor market and what kind of solutions can greatly improve the labor market conditions. So from my research and from the research of many other colleagues worldwide, we know that, I'm sorry, I wanted to share my slides. I'm not sure if that is working. I will. Oh, no, it's not working. Okay, I will not share the slides. I will just do it verbally. Yes, so we know that there is a large number of reasons and a large number of factors that can explain the differences on the labor market, especially in leading positions. Now, the topic of today's talk is women's careers in the 21st century. And why do we talk about this 21st century in today's talks? Well, because the 21st century will have quite some challenges for us, for humanity in general. So we will have a climate change that we have to deal with in the coming decades. We will have to deal with the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, worldwide famine and shortage of resources. So what we need is really the best heads in the leading positions, be that in public institutions or private institutions. And I think this is a very important focus that we all probably want to aim for and want to achieve. So we want to have the best heads, whoever that may be, in our leading positions. And as also nicely Dr. Ngozi Okonjo Iweala, who assumed the office as WTO Director General in March, said, choosing a WTO Director General should not be on merit. If that person happens, choosing a WTO Director General should be on merit. If that person happens to be a woman, great. If she happens to be African, great. So I think this very nicely summarizes the essence of what we all aim for. We want to have the best people, the best leaders in leading positions, especially now in this century where we will face great challenges. Now, going one step back, we might have a look at the 20th century. And the 20th century had great big changes, led to great and very big changes in just one century. One century, that's really a very short amount of time. So in just one century, a lot of changes happened. So there were several two world wars, several armed conflicts where more than 100 million people died. We had incredible technological change, which changed the way we do our daily household activities. There were medical developments that extended life and provided birth control measures. We had technological change that greatly changed the workplace and the way the type of jobs that we have on the labor market. And all of this provided the opportunity for men and now also women to join the labor force. And all these changes took place in just 3 to 5 generations, which is a very fast change. We have to keep that in mind. That's a very fast change. And I think we need to be aware of these immense changes that took place in a very short amount of time. And our focus is, and that was also already nicely mentioned by Ingrid and Mirjam, we need to analyze our situation, our world, what it is, what the environment and structures look like in our companies, also in our households and societies, and what it will look tomorrow and what we can do to give the future and also the future generations the best shot. Now, going back to the initial question, what do we need now for the 21st century? We need the best people in leading positions to guide us through this very uncertain future that is about to come. And to do so, we really want leaders based on merit and performance. And that was already very nicely elaborated on by Ingrid and Mirjam, there are challenges on the labor market, on the educational market. The opportunities to show merit and reveal great performance are sometimes not equally distributed in our society. And here I also agree with Mirjam, it's not only about gender, but it's also more broadly about diversity. Also other groups can have a disadvantage in showing their merit and showing performance, showing great performance. And also the way that merit and performance are perceived by others can be biased depending on the type of person that is assessed. And I think this is what we need to focus on and where we need improvement and where we can get great improvement. And concerning the factors that contribute to inequality, there is many factors. Research shows that there's different factors from the private environment, that is in the household, like child rearing. Also on the company level, there are factors, for instance, the way that people are assessed, colleagues are assessed, or also societal factors like stereotypes. And yeah, the way that we can organize all these factors can be maybe in a following way. We can think about factors coming from the candidates themselves or being associated with the candidates themselves, like for instance, self-esteem. As Mirjam already pointed out, it can also be factors on the recruiter side, on the employer side, like for instance, the way that performance is perceived. And all these perceptions and all these behavior, both on the candidates and on the employer side, are at the end affected or determined by preferences, what people like, what kind of jobs or activities people like to do, and also what their beliefs are, like for instance, self-esteem, their belief about their own skills or the belief about the skills of others. And I think this is a way of organizing all these factors and seeing what kind of measures we can take to improve outcomes on the labor market.
All right, thank you very much, Christina. Thank you very much, Ingrid and Mirjam, for this great introductory statement. So I would like to structure the discussion a little bit, and I would, in the first step, would like to talk a little bit more about potential reasons for what we observe, this gap, especially at the C level of organizations. And then in the last step today, I would also like to discuss a little bit about what are potential solutions for this problem or for these problems we observe. So let's maybe start with, or let's go a little bit deeper into potential reasons. And Mirjam, so you mentioned some reasons, let's say, that are at the level of the organization, so at the employer level. So for instance, you mentioned something like unconscious bias. You also mentioned that we need to increase the awareness.
I'm afraid we lost Jost again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now what I can do is start answering the question. Yeah, what can you do with regard to unconscious bias, with differences? Yeah, I think it's super important to become aware of the differences, and also to make it a two-way street. That it's not only, I know one of my colleagues, she's gets really sometimes frustrated about that she has to be fixed, or that women need to be fixed. And I think it is good if you are aware of the differences, and yeah, only then you're able to embrace it, or to also to smile about it, and to use it in the end, to be complementary to each other. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me, I think also in my career, there were at the start of my career, some things were more difficult for me to understand, or to see, or to acknowledge, and then 10 or 20 years later. And for me, it was also a difference when I got my two sons. Jost, I already started answering about the unconscious bias and differences. And I also that it's also a development in a career. Sometimes in the past I got frustrated about things, and now I can smile about it, or even embrace it, or use the differences. And for me, it was also it made a difference when I got a mother, and I have two sons, and when I saw how competition driven they are from their youngest age. And then I was able to smile more about it when I also saw my colleagues being very competitive. And I think in general, girls are a bit more raised in an equal way. You have to be equal, and you cooperate with each other. And for men in general, and very simplistic, of course, I know, it gives energy, it energizes them to be in this competition. For me, it's sometimes, I'm also a bit competitive, and I also like it, but it also, if it's too much for me, for my feeling, then it can also drain my energy. But I can also mention it. I can also express that it's maybe sometimes too much for me. And I think that's also in a team, if you're aware of that, and if other people are aware that I'm really oriented on cooperation, then you can work on that together in a team, if you know each other well, and if it's a safe environment, etc. I hope that's an answer to your question, Jost.
Yes, it is. And interestingly, you know, I'm now working from home for like 1 year and never had these internet problems. Of course, it's the perfect day. Yeah, no, great. Yeah, Mia, it's a good point. Ingrid, maybe a question for you, and which is a little bit related to something which is also asked in the chat. So I think it's an interesting critical question. Should women adapt to, let's say, the game that is played in organizations, let's say, to the male-dominated game there, or is it actually rather necessary to change the organization, or is the problem that the organization is not built in a way that it fits to more, let's say, the female way of leading and of working, which is also related to what Mirjam just said, competition versus more like collaboration.
You're asking if women have adapt to men. That's what you're asking?
I'm asking whether women need to adapt to the game that is played in organizations.
I understand the question. No, yeah, it's about what also Mirjam just said. It's not about fixing the women. Perhaps we need to fix the men. That's also an interesting statement, because I don't think that you need to adapt, because you want diversity in teams. So the moment that all the women are going to adapt to what the male practice is, then the whole idea of diversity is disappearing, because diversity is the whole combination of differences, different people with different backgrounds, thinking differently in one team to get better results. So like Mirjam just said, it's one likes competition and the other one doesn't like competition. It's a bit like with risk management, for instance. This is you can be very risk averse, or you can be a risk taker. So you don't want only risk takers in your team or only risk aversity in your team. You want them both, so they can be in balance together. And so the question is, or the answer to that question is no.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I understand this point. Christina, what's your position on organizations and let's say maybe the glass ceiling and also the sticky floor in organizations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we have already some great points. Ingrid and Mirjam mentioned already some great points. That is also, I think it's very closely also related to your question to Ingrid and what Ingrid already answered. Do we need to fix the women, or is it also about fixing the men, or maybe changing the structures, the institutions, the way we organize organizations, or the way we assess people? And I think that is very closely also related to your question about the glass ceiling or the sticky floor. In organizations, there is a number of factors that do play a role. So it's very difficult to really point to that one or two factors that play the main role. It's a number of factors that are also there because of the history that I mentioned earlier, because of this very quick change in our society and our technologies. And all of these factors contribute to a glass ceiling or to a sticky floor where women remain on entry-level positions, because nowadays the picture looks as follows. Usually across organizations at entry-level positions, we are doing quite well in terms of gender balance. So there we have already made great progress. Now the issue that got a lot of attention also in research lately is the career ladder, the leading positions. This is where we have still quite some differences, also in terms of diversity more broadly. And here really a number of factors play a role, like for instance, private reasons. Child rearing is, for instance, a factor in the private domain that greatly influences the career paths of men and women, and it affects them very differently. In organizations, the organizational setup, also there are some institutions, for instance, promotion procedures that might favor, for instance, men rather than women. So especially here I want to mention the self-promotion systems, where candidates have to raise their hand and say, hi, I'm up for promotion, please promote me. And research has also shown that there's great differences between men and women in who raises the hand. And there has already been made some progress in changing these systems. And they have led already to quite some good results. For instance, implementing automated promotion systems or establishing clear promotion criteria. And all of these things can help overcome the glass ceiling or the sticky floor.
Okay, yeah, interesting points. One point you mentioned, and it's like these common rules in organizations. Something I would like to ask Mirjam, and especially also Ingrid, is in pre-COVID times, you know, when we were working in offices, maybe some of us can still remember that time. Then, you know, what we could observe was that attendance was in many jobs very important. Let's say a little bit like the longer you are in the office, the more you dedicate yourself to your work. And often it was also thought like the more you actually work. But if you, for instance, look at, I know many mothers who work just very efficiently. It's like they know, okay, I have to get to the kindergarten at 4. So I just work for 8 hours, have everything done, and then I have to leave. And so my question is, and that's related to the point of Christina, is the floor maybe even stickier for some women, maybe for, let's say, for mothers, or the moment you get a child, the floor gets stickier and the glass ceiling is even further away than before? Or is it a general man, let's say, a problem for women in general? What do you think? Mirjam, maybe you go first, because you just mentioned your 2 boys, and it's interesting to learn a little bit from your experience there.
Yeah, I think in our company, and maybe also broader in the Dutch culture, but I'm also curious about what Ingrid thinks about it. At least in our company, it's not related to office hours. It's related to outputs, and I think it's quite measurable. And also recently I heard some feedback from people in our company. We talked about new ways of organizations, and they said, no, it's quite clear who gets promotion in our company and why. And we also have quite some female leaders in the company. Unfortunately, we would like to have more leaders in technology, but there are already quite some female leaders. And for us, I don't think it has anything to do with inputs, with hours, and everything to do with output, skills, experience, performance.
Okay.
And from my own perspective, I also try to to show that it's possible to work from home and to be flexible. And of course, it has also to do with, Ingrid, you started with mentioning you can't work part-time if you would like to go to the top. I would like to challenge that a bit, because I think temporarily it is possible. And I always tried to work 4 days a week. And of course, I worked on the 5th day, I worked in the evenings, I worked in the weekends. But at least I tried not to be available automatically for meetings this 5th day. And I think in the Netherlands, we have a kind of a Dutch model. You mentioned there is a lot of part-time, we are champions in part-time, but I think we're also championing in part-time, both working men and women 4 days a week. Mm-hmm. Quite some friends of me and also people in our company do that and did that. And I think that's great, because then from the start, when your children are born, also your partner works 4 days a week. And we really try to support that in our company, that also men work 4 days a week, and that is possible. I really also support women and men in our company who want to do that.
I fully agree with you, Mirjam. My daughter already told me that I should be careful with saying something like this.
I like the challenge.
But I don't mean that you cannot
2 days a week, that's a bit, that's
3
different.
days a week, impossible. But indeed, 4 days a week. I mean, if I were your advisor, Mirjam, have 4 days a week and working in the weekends and evenings, I would say you work full time. There is no, I mean, and I think with COVID will make things more easy, actually, for people just to be a full-time employee while not being in the office, because that's what you're saying, actually, Mirjam. You're saying, I work full time, but I'm not 5 days a week in the office, which makes it easier for you to pick up your child from daycare or bring it to whatever. So actually, you are working 5 days a week. The only statement I wanted to make is that indeed in the Netherlands, there is a very strong social embedding about women taking care of their children, and the men go out to work. And this is something we don't need anymore. You want to do it together. My husband and I have 4 children together. We always did it together. And yeah, sometimes I worked 4 days, indeed, at home, not at home, over there. And the 5th day, I did the things that were necessary, but I view it as if I worked part-time, full-time. And another funny thing I just wanted to share with you, it's also personal experience. I am an entrepreneur. I have my own business. We work very hard here. There are so many people that still ask me the question, oh, you work a lot, do you? Do you work full time? I mean, that's such a strange question to ask, even to me. If I had a male partner here working, they will never ask him that question. I'm 100% sure. So my statement about part-time working goes about you have to take control over your career, and it takes a lot of effort. But that is exactly the same as what you are saying here, Mirjam. And I think also another advice to women, if you work 36 or 32 hours, I would say don't do that. Just take the whole 40 hours salary income on your paycheck, because you are working 40 hours a week, only you do it on different time frames. I hope you agree.
Point taken.
No, it's great points which were mentioned here, and I think that now brings us to let's say a second maybe main reason for this gender imbalance which we saw. Let's talk about societal reasons. Ingrid, you just mentioned, let's say, the implicit idea, like, okay, let's say, yeah, if you as a woman do not take at least 1 day off, then maybe you're
a bad mother.
I now say, yeah, thanks that you said, yeah, otherwise I may get into trouble. But yes, what about this? Is it something which maybe, let's say, my mother experienced, or is it something which let's say it's still experienced even in 2021?
Yeah, maybe Mirjam can better comment on that, or Christina.
Christina also, yeah.
Yeah.
Christina, what's your experience as a professor at Vrije Universiteit who is also a mother?
A mother, yeah. Yeah, so I must say I did not experience it at all. So that kind of experience, to be confronted with a perception of a bad mother, I have not experienced that at all. I took my maternity leave and returned full-time to work afterwards. And so we have actually, it's quite similar to Mirjam's situation also. So I work 4 days, and then the 5th day is basically more flexible. So it's like evening or on the weekend, some hours, work hours. And so far I have not experienced any issues. It's quite common, I would say. It's from my experience also with colleagues, is that either people reduce their workload a little bit, for instance, to 80%, or maybe also for some time to 60%, or go back full time, and that this is perfectly accepted. But I do know also from colleagues in other countries, or from colleagues or friends who work in the industry, who have a different experience, who were confronted differently, or also in public organizations where the perception was different. And I think here a lot, the state can actually do a lot here in changing the perception. And there's also research that shows, for instance, that support for daycares is more effective than child allowances, giving money to families, because the way that the money is used is partly also used in this traditional way, whereas support and providers of childcare supports more this the sharing of child rearing, the sharing of the child education between partners. And I think that very nicely also relates to what Ingrid and Mirjam just shared also from their experiences.
So Mirjam, do you agree with Christina's statement that more or less we can say that these times are over, where it was said like, okay, you should either focus on family or on your career, and if you work 5 days, you're, as Ingrid said, like a bad mother? Are these days over?
No, I see big cultural differences. I think in France, I know from colleagues that it's very normal there to work, both men and women, 40 hours a week full time. And so they will never be seen as bad mothers. And on the other hand, they are also sometimes, they envy us a bit that we can work a bit more flexible, and that we do not have to work full time. That we have a bit more flexibility and can both work 4 days a week. So yeah, I think it's not anymore the case that you have to focus on your family, or you focus on work. And I think that's also important for employers to give the best opportunities for both men and women who need this flexibility. And I think also, the job market in the Netherlands is quite tight. So if you want to make a difference as a company, it's super important to attract both men and women.
Yeah.
And more from a societal perspective, I really support if it's not that expensive. I think some years ago in the Netherlands, it was really expensive to pay for childcare. And I hope it's getting better, because I fully agree with what you say, Christina. It's crucial for society to support women. And it's not only when your children are young, it's a start. If you talk about the gender pay gap, it continues. And I think it's super important that men and women are both be able to be independent and to be able to take care of yourself also in eventually bad times.
Well, that is a very important statement, Mirjam. I think that you have to take that responsibility indeed, also as a woman, that you know that you have to be able to take care of yourselves. And it is really a matter of fact that in the Netherlands, the figures are not out of my head, I'm looking for them, but there are so many women that are not in that situation, that just can take care of themselves, and that's just not good. And only 5 hours work, there's been some research about that. If they only work 5 hours more each week, they would be at that level of independency. But that's mostly, that's of course, we are probably in a different, I'm not sure where these women work, so I didn't go into that depth, but that's a general, these are the general figures.
Yeah, interesting. So very, very interesting to hear about that. And I can just say from a German perspective, getting, for instance, a place in the kindergarten is still very, very difficult. And I know that many women indeed struggle with, or many families struggle with finding such a place. And of course, the problem is that then, let's say, if there is this struggle, often the one who, let's say, delays her career is the woman normally in that relationship, and not the man. And the question is whether we are here talking about individual preferences, a topic we will discuss in the next couple of minutes, or whether these are still, let's say, something like societal norms which are so deeply enrooted in our minds that we are just, let's say in this case, just behaving in the way that we have learned it the way. And that's also brings us also to the question about role models. But now maybe we switch to individuals. And I want to talk a little bit more about also decisions maybe women take in their career, which may affect their career chances. And Mirjam, I think you mentioned some numbers, and I found them quite interesting. So please correct me if I say something wrong. Among women with technical backgrounds, there are just 10% or 15% women within these master or bachelor and master programs.
Yeah.
Is that a problem, or does that affect their chances to get promoted or to make a career? Like, or what about these educational decisions?
I think it's a pity. I think diversity is about also about using talents, and it's a pity if young girls have the opinion or think that that technology is not something for them. I think it really can make a difference if there are role models that you can compare yourself with, and if you think, oh, if she can do it, I can do it. And it was also for myself when we prepared this webinar. I was thinking, I miss at the moment a role model of somebody who is a step further and a bit older maybe. And I thought as an objective for this year, Ingrid, you also said that objectives are important. I thought, I'm going to look for a mentor, who is a bit further than I am, because I'm talking about role models, I'm mentoring people and also women. Why not arrange that for myself? I think it's super important, and I hope that more women in the Netherlands will start studying technology, and young girls, that we can inspire them. And I know also internationally, for example, in Spain, there are much more women who study technology. So it's also, and I don't know why. I don't know why it's in Spain. What the differences are. And sometimes I'm also a bit joking. I think also within Airbus, we are really a European and a global company. Why not pick all the best practices from all the companies and look at the Nordics and think, oh, what can we use from them? What works best in Spain, in Germany, in France, everywhere.
You know, Mirjam, that also has to do with the social culture in the Netherlands. That has been researched. We are deeply socially embedded in our culture that affects the choices that children are making in education, it's really in our culture. The Dutch culture is very, traditional.
Yeah, that maybe also links nicely back to Jost's question, because is it individual preferences or is it social norms or values, exactly like the differences that you mentioned, Mirjam, that the study rates are very different of STEM fields in Spain, for instance, than in the Netherlands. I think that is a clear indicator that actually social values and norms play a very big role. Yes. And that has nothing to do with individual preferences. We make choices that are also influenced by these values. And they might not be in line with our individual preferences of what we really want to do and are also good at.
Yeah.
Yeah, fully agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the same moment, you also would like to to create examples of people who are based on individual choices, are the role models, are the new role models. Because I see also now in the politics, we now have in the Netherlands much more female leaders of the parties. I think, it's refreshing, it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think today sorry, Ingrid, please.
And Sigrid Kaag, one of the female leaders in one of the political parties, she is getting, I think, how many percent? Huge amounts of 30 or 40% of the tweets she gets about her appearances are very negative and very bashing, and that's much higher than all her male peers. It's also very, unbelievable, actually.
And it's also still a bit pioneering. What are effective and role model female leadership styles? I think that it's still confusing. We still don't know. And I think, for example, Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand, she's so different. And I think she's a great example of being a breadwinner and a caretaker.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes that's not easy yet. And also the example you mentioned from Sigrid Kaag. And I'm curious where we will be in some years from now. It's kind of pioneering, I think.
So maybe I think that's a good point. And now we can start thinking about how to get where we want. So let's talk about some potential solutions for the problems we discussed here. And maybe let's start with organizations. So what can organizations do in the next couple of years to fix a little bit the problem we saw here today? What maybe Ingrid, from your perspective as someone who's really or very experienced with executive search. So
no, I can tell you out of my experience what companies really do. They have indeed, I work with a lot of big corporates, and they have really set targets for their management teams to make sure that they are getting more diverse. So they really say we want 30% in each layer of the company at least filled with female managers. Or I also know companies that say no, we make it a 50% target. So that target setting, and they do that sometimes very very binding and hard. And they give, for instance, our office partners at work also the assignment. We want someone in that field, and we want that vacancy filled with a woman. So then we are going to hire a woman, so they make it very concrete, and that's all about target setting. And that, I think, that is also, it's just a matter of doing. Become more diverse is a matter of doing. I think Mirjam already explained that you need to make sure that you bind alliances with the men, because you have to do it together and with clear goals. I think that makes the most sense. But it's possible. But
Ingrid, don't these targets, these company targets, doesn't that discriminate men?
No, I don't think so, because in the end, the world is about 50-50 men and women. So we are not excluding men. I mean, it's not that we are going to hire boards with only women. It's just going to be 50-50. And so that's not excluding men. We want including men. We love men. I love men, you love men. Yeah, we are here together. So
Understand your point. Mirjam, what's your perspective on what organizations should do in the next couple of years?
Yeah, first I would like to mention that I'm always a bit surprised that it's a woman quotum. I think why not mention it a diversity quotum? And when I see the levels of education for women, I think now if it continues like this, then it's maybe 80-20 in some years, and then men don't want to be behind. So why not mention it a diversity quotum? It can be the other way around. You see that already at schools. That a lot more women work there. So I think it's about diversity and not about a women quotum only. Your question was also to what can organizations do? Huh? Again, role models. Today I saw a great post of our CTO, Grazia Vitellini from Airbus. I think she's super important. There are also other women in the company, so that's very important. What I mentioned earlier, put this topic on the agenda. I fully agree with Ingrid that objectives are important. yeah, and I've also said it also earlier, it's about doing, it's not about talking. It's about supporting each other, embracing each other, being complementary, and making strengths, look at the strengths, make strengths of differences, and in a broader sense than only gender diversity. I think that's the future. We are, at Airbus, we are a global company. We would like to cover all the different perspectives of all different types of customers and citizens. I think that's not the future. It's now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Christina, what's your perspective? Also, maybe based on your research, what can organizations do?
Yeah, I think organization play a very important role here. They can change a lot. So in what research has also shown is that also softer interventions can already make a big change, such as, for instance, mentoring programs. Mentoring programs have shown also great success because they provide, on the one hand, also some networking opportunities, and they provide also informal information about how things work in an organization, how to approach a career, how to behave strategically, maybe also, because that is also an important part, especially in the beginning of a career. To some extent, you need to be a bit strategic also, or have a plan where you want to go to, and a mentor can give great direction and help develop that plan for the own future also. Also, communication has shown to play a great role. The way that the leader of an organization communicates has a big impact on applications, on the way that employees also perceive a company, potential candidates, also people remaining in organizations, employees remaining in organization. That is also very important. So I think these two tools are very important. Mentoring programs, advisors within organizations, senior advisors within organizations, and communication. Communication has also a very big impact on the behavior and the decisions that people make. And then also some stronger interventions and some circumstances, they can be justified. Like, for instance, quotas can be justified. I think that these should be interventions that can be implemented if the other interventions do not work. Softer interventions do not work, but there is good reasons also in some situations where quotas make absolutely sense. And that is, for instance, when there is kind of a coordination problem in the entire society. So if, for instance, women don't study STEM fields because they believe that they don't have a chance there, then there will be a lack of women on the labor market later on. And to overcome this coordination problem, a quota can resolve this dilemma and can lead to more efficient outcomes.
Okay, so when we talk about quotas, so we have on the one hand what Ingrid mentioned about targets set by organizations, but quotas are more something like a governmental intervention.
Right. Yeah. So that was actually something I wanted to ask Ingrid.
Yeah.
Earlier on. So when you say target, that is like a soft target, or is it a hard target?
Yeah, I would say a hard target. Now we have in the Netherlands, we have recently been our government has the wetsvoorstel, the law for the quotum has passed, but that's only a quotum for in the boards of Raad van Commissarissen. Please help me.
Yeah, the board, if it's a 2-tier board or a 1-tier board. Yeah.
Thank you. And that is a minimum of 1/3 male or female should be in the supervisory board. Now there is also set a target figure for the bigger companies, and that target figure is just a target figure. So that's a soft quotum. That's also part of that law. But as far as I'm concerned, I would say don't do a target figure, do a firm, a clear quotum, because then, at least something happens, and at least only, and even if you only do that for 3 to 5 years, I think there are great examples in Norway. You have shown the figures there, where there is a quotum, and that really brings better results, because then people have to do it. And now you can say, oh, we couldn't find them. This is
yeah, exactly. Ingrid, what are your thoughts about? Yeah, but we cannot find them. We don't know where they are, or they do not exist yet.
Yeah, then you didn't look hard enough. That's the answer to that question, because it's very easy to have, and for instance, in the part, if you are in, like in the, if you are looking in, if you are 5 men in a board, it's very easy to, and also it feels very safe to get another guy in that looks like you. And yeah, why would you search very hard if you know that this person is very sufficient? I understand that. But if you really want to make some changes, you have to search very hard, and you have to do that extra effort to find the right person, the right girl for the job. Because that's what makes your team diverse. And that's why you want a diverse team, because you want better results in the end. And we cannot find them. That doesn't exist, really. We have never had to say, no, we couldn't find a woman for your whatever role it is.
Okay, interesting.
Never.
What I can briefly share about soft targets. So in Germany, they tried it with companies were allowed to set their own targets. And some companies set the target of 0%. And they, of course, achieved, they often achieved that target or even exceeded that target. But yeah, you know, 0% is also a target. So just so much about the soft cap or soft targets. And now the German government is considering to really set a hard quota. So just to share this experience with you.
And Jos, did something happen with regard to in the news or with regard to public relations towards these companies?
Yeah, of course, you know, there's a few media reports on these companies, but there's no, at least not that I've heard any, let's say, large outcry or so. But because they often also bring the argument, for instance, what Ingrid just mentioned, now what Mia and what you just mentioned, like, yeah, it's so difficult to find, you know, women that are at the same level of experience and skill level.
Yeah,
it's at least not my argument, but yeah, they used it, and so the soft target, at least from our experience, I wouldn't use it. It's a waste of, you know, companies bought 10 years of time with these soft quotas, but now it doesn't work. I don't believe it. It's a pity.
So Mirjam and Ingrid, from your long experience in the industry, do self-set goals, as Jost just mentioned, do they work, or do you think that organizations really need to be pushed to implement, to do something about diversity? Or is it that the organizations, as in your experience, that companies now themselves are realizing that diversity in itself can improve the company's performance and go for it, really go for it, do something about it?
I think at least it can accelerate the change. And yeah, it's a bit difficult for me. I don't have the overview with regard to soft targets versus strict targets. To know or to have an idea what will happen. And but at least I think it can accelerate the situation and the change, because sometimes they say if we do not introduce these targets, these hard targets, then only in 15 years it will be an equal situation, or maybe even longer than 50 years. Yeah. But I have to admit, when I was 25, I think I would not have expected that I would favor such a diversity quota. And I think I would have expected that it was not necessary at all. And now, 20 years later, I think, it goes really slowly. Yeah. So maybe it's a solution, and I hope indeed a temporary solution. And I see also already a change without these strict targets. So
I agree with you, Mirjam. It's indeed 30 years, 20 years ago, it was the same story. So yeah, and yeah, I think it will help. It will absolutely help to do this.
So the main argument is really the acceleration argument, that it accelerates the change and getting to a better outcome in the companies.
Yeah.
But here I would like, you know, an interesting question which was just asked in the chat is, you know, it's one thing, let's say, to increase the number of women in boards and also in the top management, but how do you ensure that these women are also accepted? You know, isn't it a little bit, couldn't it be, let's say, some kind of a stigma to be the, sorry to use it, like the quota woman? Or, and how can companies ensure that there's even, let's say, this inclusion of women in the top management, in the board of directors? What's your experience here? Maybe Ingrid, because you have much experience with boards. Like, is it a natural process, or
you mean how they are accepted in the board? That's what. Yeah,
in the boards. Yeah.
So how are they adapted, and how are they?
and is there, for instance, their information, their knowledge accepted? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I you know, I think I know what you. I think I know what you mean. You cannot have one woman in a board and then think, oh, the problem is solved, and we go on with our lives, because that's not changing the behavior, the culture. If you that will not be a success. You have to really be, yeah, you have to indeed embrace this, and we always say is één is geen, one is none. One is not enough. You need a third at least in your board. So you cannot sit with 5 men and 1 woman. You make it two women and 3 men. That would be great. And then you have more balance in the team, because it's all about a balanced team. And if you are indeed a culture, because a lot of organizations are struggling with this, you want that, and a woman doesn't want to sit there because, and then being ignored, and she just wants to be part of the team. And you have to make more efforts to get there. It's not just put 1 woman there and go on with your lives. That's not the solution. That's not what you want to achieve. You want to achieve a better team result.
Yeah. Mirjam, does this also, let's say, meet your experience?
I fully agree with what you need 30% to make the change, and also to have an impact. I think that's very important. If one is none, I fully agree. I've had the same experience myself, and then yeah, it's really strange, but it's such a difference if you're the only one or if you're with 2 or 3. I don't know exactly how it works, but it makes a big difference, is my experience. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting points. Maybe let's now, so we talked about organizations. Maybe let's also talk about government. So the quota is something which governments can do in order to accelerate this process. Is there anything else where you think, like, for instance, the Dutch government need to work on this in order to further accelerate the process we just discussed? Or is it not, politics doesn't really matter here?
Hey, Jos, there was one thing. My eldest son, he's 16, and we had a discussion about this topic on a Saturday, and he said to me, "Oh, Mom, you have to watch the Netflix a documentary, and it's about the gender pay gap." So I did, and it was really interesting. And there was referred to an example of Iceland, and there they offer, I think, a 6 months leave for both men and women. And if you don't do it, then you lose it. So use it or lose it. And it's equal for men and women. And that made a big difference for Iceland. And yeah, that's something that a government does. Yeah, and I thought it was brilliant because they said, yeah, it starts, and the whole an important theme of this documentary was the caretaking, being the breadwinner versus the caretaker, and that women are often the caretakers. And yeah, I think it's very important that you are both men and women, breadwinners and caretakers. And I thought it was really a nice idea of Iceland's government to do it like this. And then you have from the first day that your child is born, and then you do it together. And yeah, I think it's, Christina, you said it also, it's also about strategy, about strategic thinking. And I think that's what you sometimes can underestimate when you marry, when you have children, get children, and you're not always realize how it is 10, 20 or 30 years later.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, interesting point about, with a law or with new regulations to also increase, let's say, the amount of hours men spend on educating the children or taking care of their children. That's
And what they also mentioned was if you apply for a job, it doesn't differ anymore if a young woman applies for a job or a young man. They both can get a child, and then you missed him for 6 months.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought it was really, really smart and creative.
Yeah, that is actually it. Yeah. Oh, Ingrid, you go ahead.
No, please go. I just want to say that these things are today are really still happening. That if you women that lose their jobs or their contracts are not being extended because they're pregnant, for instance, it really happens. And these kind of things make the world more equal, actually, because the basis is equal. Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
And gender pay gap really exists. I hear it, I hear it almost every day, that I sometimes think, how can you earn this? Because I know your colleague next to you earns a totally different figure. It happens still.
Christina, what's your point?
Yeah, I totally agree that the government can certainly do something here also to support the change. And especially when it comes to raising kids, educating kids, taking care of kids, I think the role of the government is very important and can have a big impact. And I think that came already also out in the discussion, the role of the men as caretakers. That is also something that is sometimes underestimated, that also men can be stigmatized at work or can be confronted with stereotypes if they step down and want to take care of their children. I think that is also something very important that needs to be addressed both from the government side and also from the organization company side, that this is something acceptable in our society and in our organizations, that men take care of, or fathers take care of their children.
By the way, something which is quite interesting is, so we had a discussion here in Germany a couple of months ago, where a woman, which was in the top management team of a company, said like, the problem is she can't take maternity leave because it's not possible, because she was, legally obliged to either step down as, I think she was CEO of her company. Leave was not possible for CEO. So it's like, that's of course also a problem. But something, there's an interesting study about it, because we talked about gender pay gap. There's an interesting study from Denmark, which showed that when the male owner of a company, or a male CEO of a company, when he got a child, like a girl, in that case, what you could observe was, over the years, that the gender pay gap within that company was significantly reduced. And I think this brings me back, I think Mirjam pointed out about awareness. Maybe the awareness, especially of men who are in these positions, differs when they think about, or when they got like a girl and think like, oh, now it's getting real, and maybe I want to change something, so that my girl does not, maybe experience these problems. So it's a difficult solution, but yeah, at least it shows a little bit maybe the awareness point. But what do you think of awareness? Let's say, are these top managers aware of these problems? Do they think it is a relevant problem, or are we still talking more or less about PR? Maybe Ingrid, you have a point on that?
About PR, about what kind of PR?
More like it's a positive PR if you say like, yeah, we care about diversity. You know, no one would say, yeah, don't care about diversity, but it's so easy to talk.
Yeah, Mirjam said it in her story. Nobody is against a diversity. Nobody will say, no, we don't want that. So it probably is for some people just PR, I'm sure of it. But yeah, in the end, that's the same story as with your 0%. We set a target, it's 0%. Yeah, okay. If that's your attitude, just you are. I mean, I wouldn't waste any more time then in that situation. So yeah. But I think a lot of companies and people are taking this seriously. And then we were talking about diversity, female, male, male, female. But there is, of course, a whole different world behind diversity. It's all about cultural diversity as well. I mean, you also want people with a different cultural background in your team. You want the whole spectrum. Diversity is male, female. You can see that very easily. But you also want indeed, like Mrs. Harris, she has a different color than I have, but you want that in one team together, because we are all different, but together, the art of diversity is thinking independently together. That is what we want.
Okay, I see we have 3 more minutes. So what I would like to do is now, as a concluding point, maybe that each of you provides some kind of recommendation to our audience, like what can they do to break through this glass ceiling? What are your maybe 1 or 2 tips for breaking this glass ceiling? Maybe, I don't know, Mirjam, do you want to start? Do you have a...
Yeah, I'm going to repeat, I think, what I said earlier. Aim for the moon, you might hit a star. Don't be too harsh upon yourself, too perfectionistic. Don't be afraid to fail sometimes, and just start all over again. And also think, I hope that people also in your environment, in your network say, hey, of course you can do it. And otherwise say it to yourself. Of course you can do it. Just try.
Great.
Go for it.
Christina?
Yeah, I think that is a very important part, the self-confidence part, being aware, and also combined with awareness, being aware of what you want to do, and analyzing yourself, taking time to also figure out what is it that you want, and then go for it and be confident about it, and look for support to achieve your goals. And if people are in your way, then change your network, change your support team, and look for people who are really behind you and supportive to you.
Great, thank you. Ingrid, your final words.
Well, I think set clear objectives is for companies that are trying to become more diverse, an important one, but also for indeed the person that wants to make a career, try to set clear objectives there. It takes hard work, but also take your time, like you said, Christina, just take your time and make sure that you make time for this, because women always think that, oh, well, I have to do all the other things and then I come later. No, take also time for yourself, and indeed shoot for the moon. Don't be shy.
Great, thank you very much, Ingrid. So before I will close this session, we at Vrije Universiteit, we also thought about what can we do in order to maybe accelerate the process a little bit. And what we decided was that we offer scholarships for future female or women leaders for our 2 MBA programs, the MBA in International Business and the Executive MBA Leading with Purpose. So we are offering these scholarships which cover up to 50% of the tuition fee, and which we would like to offer to these future women leaders who may further accelerate that process in the next couple of years. So I will now, of course, put a link in the chat. So if you're interested to learn more about these scholarships, please feel free to have a look at the PDF or reach out to me, and I'm happy to provide further information. Now, I would like to close this session. I thank you, Ingrid, Mirjam, and Christina for taking the time for this interesting discussion. I think we all learned a little bit more about the problems women experience in their career, even today in the 21st century. And we hope that maybe if we meet again next year, that the gap has closed a little bit, maybe not a little bit, has closed further, and that we can see that the process is not just this slow target, but indeed accelerating and accelerating, so that maybe in 10 years from now, we are maybe talking about a quota for men in top management and no longer for women. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much also to the audience. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I hope to see you again very soon. Thank you and have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.